Hey, this is Mark Money Green, and you're listening to Soul Booking Cool with Jewel B.
It's so motherfucking cool to listen to So Fucking Cool.
Welcome to So Booking Cool. It's Jewel B. Today's guest is a true music industry maven and veteran of more than 40 years. From artist to DJ, promoter, marketer, manager in various arenas, roadie, video editor, stylist, talent, booking and literary agent, music, TV, concert, and performing arts executive, entrepreneur, he's done it. The long list of entertainers whose career he's been a major part of include Grandmaster Flash, Master G, Sugar Hill Gang, Tina Marie, Usher, Prince, Shaka Khan, Melba Moore, Salt and Pepper, Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff, Eddie Murphy, Aretha Franklin, as well as a slew of legendary actors. He is the general manager at Lehman Center of the Performing Arts, as well as the chairman of artist relations for the Hip Hop Museum. He also founded and still has ownership of the Celebrity Talent Agency, which has included many greats, including the late greats Roy Ayers, Roberta Flack, and Angie Stone, among many other star clients. His new book, The Show Must Go On, Backstage Stories of a Hip Hop Agent, is a compelling read, published by Mind Matters. Here with us today, he is Mark Green.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, man. What an introduction, man. I was like,
It's great to have you. Listen, you've done so much. It's incredible.
yes, yes. Yes, it's been a blessing for me.
And over 40 years, it doesn't look like that much time has passed. I'm sure the viewers would agree. Yeah, you did say that you have enough stories to fill up a library, and they are all true.
Yes, I gave you the short version and the G version.
Wow, yeah, because one of my questions too was with so much of what you shared, was there anything that you left out? And you don't have to tell us what you left out, but was there anything that you did and why?
Yeah, there was a lot that I left out. When I was talking to the book publisher, she's like, Mark, your book is getting too long. And I had like 150 pictures. She says, no, that's too many photos. Oh, give me just 50, So I cut back a lot. There were a lot of stories that I still haven't been told, a lot of artists I didn't even bring up. I mean, I've been working now with actors and actresses, and that's a whole nother ball game of stories as well.
Would there be another book in the future, maybe?
Maybe so. We'll see how this one goes. If people come out and buy it, we might be able to do another one.
How has the industry responded so far? I mean, there are a lot of blurbs from people in the industry, but who else has responded to The Show Must Go On?
I mean, the crazy thing I'd never imagined, but most people say once they get started, can't put it down. I must heard that several times over and over, or they said, man, this book is so good. They just keep giving me compliments on the book, and I'm like, really, it's just my story. But I guess they feel it, like you said, very compelling to them and very interesting to hear these detailed stories.
It's definitely a page turner. Definitely. Do you plan to share your story in another way, like maybe a movie or something?
People been telling me that as well, and I'm just trying to kind of conceive and believe that that could be possible. I mean, my whole idea, Jewel, is like when I did this book,
Mhm.
it was based on me wanting to inspire others and by sharing the lessons I learned from, these incredible stories that you're going to read about. And basically the legends who I work with, we're talking the beginning of hip hop. So you're going to hear the stories of some of the great hip hop legends that you listen to over and over.
Your story is amazing, as we have said. You had a love for music yourself, and you were even in a band. That's why it seems like you have done just about everything in music, even from the artist side, although that didn't last long. And even just overcoming what you overcame, like with your body, some of those physical challenges.
Yes.
Yeah, just kind of tell us about some of the early challenges that you had to overcome and when you realized, what your path really was.
Well, when I first, as we, beginning of the book starts with God and ends with God. And I say that because my life was definitely changed in both situations. You know, in the beginning of the book, I talk about being paralyzed from my waist down and how I had 7 specialists. Everybody said I would never walk again. And it wasn't until my mother, who was a very faithful woman, and she continued to tell me, have faith in God and continue to pray and ask God for healing. I was 11 years old, so it was not really meaning a lot to me. But after, weeks and weeks being in the wheelchair, I had that desire and passion. I wanted to walk again. So I started doing what she said. I would pray daily and ask God for healing. And eventually he answered my prayers. And not only did he answer me, allow me to walk again, but he also made me a track star, breaking several records in high school. And then as you look into my book at the end, you're going to see all the different things. That my life was like a roller coaster, and all the different things that happened throughout my life to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to do the next best thing, turn my life back over to God. And once that happened, everything went turned to be good again.
By the way, do you still go by Mark Money Green?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Most of my friends call me Money Green or Money. But the funny thing about that story, because everybody's like, how did you get that name? Well, back in the day when I was managing a group called the Boogie Boys, and people have to realize in the 80s, like, it's not like now where you get paid before the show. Back in the 80s, you got paid after the show. And most of the promoters back then were either con artists, hustlers, pimps, pushers, drug dealers. So what they would do is they would pay the opening act and the headliner, and then they would leave. And we didn't have cell phones or beepers, anything like that. So all you had to have was a dime so you could make a phone call. But again, who are you going to call? Because they had already left the building. So I decided, listen, going forward, I am going to make sure that we go on first. And one particular show, the Boogie Boys went on before I got the money, and I came in the room, I started yelling and cursing at them and saying all kinds of things. And finally, Romeo JD said, "All right, Mark Money Green, we got it." And that name took place on that time and stuck for the rest of my life. It stuck for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. You did what had to be done,
Yeah.
many of us would say. Looking back, do you agree with what your teacher said when your teacher said that you had to choose between music and sports?
Yes, because music was my love. That was my passion. I love sports, but I love music more than anything.
And it was interesting to hear like the teacher talking about how your body, your physique was getting too bulky to play the instrument.
Yeah, because right after I had the situation with my legs, I stayed in the gym. All I did was work out like 5, 6 days a week, and I'm working my legs. I'm doing the chest and my push-ups, and I'm doing everything. So I was just bulking up for football, but at the same time, I'm trying to play the drums, and I'm stiff. I'm too stiff. So he's like, "Listen, Mark, you're too stiff. You gotta loosen up."
I don't think like who would have thought that that's something to think about,
Yeah,
someone's physique when it comes to playing an instrument. Wow.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And then, as you read in the book, later on, I got stabbed a couple times, and it affected my hands, so I couldn't play the piano anymore. But you know, God is good.
Yes, you have been through so much. You've been through so much. Like the adversity and your life really is a movie. You talk about how the industry can be callous in a dog eat dog world.
Yes.
What is the key to looking out for yourself and wanting the best for yourself versus hurting someone else in the process?
Well, a few things. One, gotta keep your eyes open, watch your back.
Mhm.
To think before you say things. I made some mistakes early on in my career by talking before I thought about it, or just trying to let people know I knew something. And later on, I realized that I offended some top uh, executives by what I said, and it really kind of affected my relationship going forward. So what I decided was later on, before I started speaking, I say to myself all the time now, so Mark, if you say that, what are you looking to get out of it? What is it that you want to get? What's going to be the end results? And think about what you're getting ready to say, or either you change how you're going to say it. Because like sometimes we say things, it's like, I'm going to say this, I'm going to do that, and you just don't care. But later on, as you know, words have a lot of power, so it can affect your relationship or affect your position.
Mm, okay. Did you know that you would write a book about your life?
Absolutely not. You know what happened that kind of got me started was as I started posting a lot of photos and telling little stories about what happened on that particular day. People would always say, you know, you should write a book. And it wasn't until Master G started telling the story how when people asked him, well, who did you first hear rapping? And when he started saying me, that just kind of generated everything because what people didn't realize is that my untold story was in 1977. I discovered rapping in the Bronx by being in the Battle of the DJs. And when I heard that, I brought it back to New Jersey. And at one particular party, Guy O'Brien was following me around. He's a high school friend, and he said to me, he said, "Mark, you know, what is that you're doing?" And I said, "Man, that's they're doing in New York. They calling it rapping." And he's like, "Wow!" And he just kept asking me and you know trying to figure it out. By 1978, I went to college, and he called me up. He says, "Yo, we're making a record." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "We're making a record off of Good Times," and the record became Rapper's Delight. He ended up getting the name Master G. And he also did the forward in my book, which, you know, I was very elated and happy that he did it.
And you also helped Grandmaster Flash get his book deal.
Yes, I sure did. It took me about 2 years to convince him to do the book. And because I said, to Flash, you have a story. You created something that everybody in the world is using now. People need to know your story. How did you create mixing two records together? How did you create this whole thing? Why do they call you one of the fathers of hip hop? You have to tell that story. Eventually, I got him to tell the story, and that's how that book got published.
Did you guys talk like once it was released and it went on to be so successful?
We did. You know, there was some issues with the book and in terms of promoting it because he, like myself, sometimes you're like you don't want to say certain things or talk about certain things in your life. And I think that he didn't want to go that route. So of course he decided not to do a lot of interviews. And of course the book really didn't do as well as it could because had he did those interviews, it really would have blew up.
Mm, wow. At this point, could there be another book? Or would it just be like going back to that one and kind of giving it a new life?
Him or me?
Well, you came up with the idea. What would you say, like from your expertise, from even knowing that that was a good idea for him to even do a book?
Well, I mean, I pushed the book because again of who he was. He's got created hip hop. And, you know, by traveling with him over the years, I had been to probably 17 countries. He's probably been to about 100. And I couldn't believe, like, going to these countries that people all over the world love hip hop like they did. Going to Italy, France, and Spain, and Russia, I'm not Russia, and some other third world countries. And I was like, they couldn't speak like the people in Italy, they couldn't speak the language, but they knew all the songs, all the lyrics. And the same thing with the people in France. They couldn't speak English, but they knew all the songs to the hip hop song. I mean, to the hip hop records. So for me, I was like, it was mind blowing for me to see that. And I says, you got to tell your story, man. People all over the world know who you are.
And at that point, were you even thinking that you should tell your own story? No.
No, no, not at all. I mean, this really just came about 3 years ago that I decided to go ahead and go ahead and pen this memoir because again, I had so many stories to tell, and it's just a matter of getting it done, right?
Hmm. And with your collaborator, tell us how that came to be.
Yes, well, Erika lives in my neighborhood. Erika used to write a lot of books. I used to call them the street novels because they would be the stories that you would read, you know, about love and everything else.
Yes.
Um, and so when I decided to write the book, I wanted to find somebody who can speak my voice, and she was that person, you know. So it was an easy collaboration for us because we both had that kind of element where we can tell it from the street side of the game versus a corporate side.
By the way, that is something that is discussed, like the street side, some of the shady practice, not even shady, but just how dangerous it can get at times
Yeah,
in the industry. Is that really also on the white side as well? Some of the street,
absolutely.
it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, you read in my book and you talk about how my first job in the business and just all the different things. It's the same thing. It's just coming. It comes in a different way. But it is. You're reading a book about the guns and the drugs, and you might even read about a couple murders that happened during the time. But I think the whole thing again is really to inspire people to let them see what it was like in the 80s and how this hip hop has evolved to where it is now. What you're doing with marketing, we're using it for marketing, we're using it for sales, it's fashion, and how the whole hip hop has just changed the way we do business in the world.
What are your thoughts about the current hip hop state?
I really don't have much to say because I'm not really that keen into what's going on. Like I hear a song here that I like, but there's so many artists that coming out now. By the time I learn one and get to learn their music, there's 10 more that came out that people say, "Hey, do you know this one or you know that one?" I'm like, "Who?" You know, I think to me, this music that's coming out, I call it microwave music because it's just in and out. When we came up during the time, it's more of developing. You had artist development, you had A&R, you had all kinds of people that actually helped you make who you were going to be as an artist. Where now it's like when I remember going probably around 2000 or 2010, I went to a record label because I had this artist I thought was really hot. And all they asked me was, how many followers do they have? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because, the whole internet was new. And I was like, followers? I mean, this girl's a star. Listen to her. And the thing was, nowadays was like, well, how many followers they have and what, are they on YouTube and this? And I was like, man, it's really, the game has changed.
Do you see it shifting away from that at some point?
No, I think it's just going to go more into where it is now. I don't think we'll ever go back to how it used to be, um, you know, but I think that going forward now it's even crazier because you got AI and people can go on. One of my friends, he put a whole group together, like music, the songs, a whole band, and the whole virtual of the band through AI.
Wow.
You know, I'm like, who's that band? He said, oh, it's the band I just created. I said, what about the music? Oh yeah, I created all that on AI.
I know you guys probably could not have fathomed that.
Not, not at all. I mean, just the fact of not, back in the day when drum machines and everything came out, it's like to me, how could you like a machine play live music? It just none of that really made sense to me because I'm a musician. I came up studying music. My degree is in music. So, it's like people who can play music, you just didn't have the same respect because it's like this guy's like he's got some beats off the internet and now he's a musician.
With your different hats and skill sets, what are your favorite roles within music?
Well, I have different favorite roles. I like being an agent. I like being able to provide a service for the artists and also help them with their career. Also, like as being the general manager, presenter at a performing arts theater. I like being able to present shows, pick the artists, and then see it all the way through. Um, Basically, anything that has to do with music, I love. But those are my first two loves right there.
When you were at another center and you were really helping it pop and just grow, and there were some people at that place that didn't really want to give you the credit, like you had to kind of learn that some people were just jealous and stuff. What is your advice for anyone who might be going through that?
And I just say you have to ignore them. You just got to keep focused on your goals and what you want. There are always going to be haters in every job, not just the industry, but I deal with it every day. At the theater, I deal with it every day. Booking shows. People don't want to see you succeed. They don't want to see you get, wealthy. They don't want to see those things. So you just have to like be careful about who you let know your business and just kind of stay focused and just keep your head straight.
Wow, that's deep. What was the hardest part to write in The Show Must Go On, and why?
My personal life. If you read in the personal life, it's a little, there's some funny stories in there because I talk about how I met my wife, which I met on Match.com. I tell that story, but I tell all the stories of how before I met her, all the girls that I dated and some of the things that happened while we were dating.
Right.
And I remember talking to Steve Harvey one time about when this online dating first came out. And then when I had told him all these crazy stories, he said, man, I think I'm going to do me an online dating service. And he did. But the stories I was telling him were just crazy because it really taught me about women. You know, we as men, we think we know everything, but going out on dates like 2 or 3 times a week with different women. And I dated every nationality.
Mhm.
And it made me understand that I don't know jack. You know, it took me a while to understand. But one thing I did realize is that people, women especially, they want to be able to laugh and they want to feel comfortable with you, you know, and protected. So
Has your lovely wife, what does she think about you writing a book, sharing your story?
I don't think she even read it right now.
Okay. But
You know,
she knows about
no,
it.
she knows about it. No,
Yeah.
she's very supportive and everything about it, you know. And again, you know, I mean, I told my story. You know, the funny thing is, I said to my wife, how old were you in 1985? She says, well, I was only this age. And I said, oh, okay, then it's all good.
And you know what, I love that because so there's an age difference, right?
Yes,
And
12 years. Yeah.
years. Is there any like real difference you would say, like comparing that to prior dating experiences? What advice do you have about that?
Well, that's a whole nother ball
Mhm.
game, Joe. But I mean, for me, it's like, you know, you have to find what you're comfortable with and know what you can bring to the table, know what they can bring to the table, and see if it works for both of you.
Absolutely. And yeah, you shared something that is very also tragic that you faced as well
Yes,
in the book.
right.
Oh,
The loss of my daughter.
yes, yes.
Yes. That whole segment was kind of, it was, you know, it's hard to write because um you know, I don't even try to post anything because it becomes too emotional. You know, I lost my daughter, and then about I think a year later I lost my mother, and then right after I lost my mother, as soon as I got married, my wife got cancer. So it was like one right after the other, and it was only God that brought me through. But I tell everything in the story in the book how everything kind of came about, and you can really see and feel what I'm talking about.
What do you think they would say about The Show Must Go On?
They would love it. They would love it, you know, because it's a true story and it's true and it's heartfelt, you know. I'm telling you from my heart and telling you what actually happened.
Any moments of the book that was the easiest to write and to talk to us about?
The road stories, because those were just so visual in my mind. It's like I can still see everything that happened those days. And, you know, I talk about when me and Montel Jordan was in Brazil and the lady who was actually promoting the show, she was the wife of a mafioso boss in Brazil. And how she just took us under her wing. And it was just crazy. There's one part in the story where, you know, we're riding around like, and I said, why do we have 4 blacked out SUVs and why we were riding like the president? And we were like in the middle car. And then that's when I found out who she was. And I remember her shutting down a restaurant. She said, you guys want something to eat? And I said, yes. She'd shut down the restaurant so that only us were there to eat. And she said to us, you guys want to see Brazil? I said, yeah. Next thing I know, we were in a helicopter over looking at the city of Brazil. It's like, I thought we were going to go on a car ride. I didn't know we were going to be in a helicopter. But the last thing that was really crazy is like when we went to a club and she said, you want anything to drink? I said, yes. She gave me a whole case of Moet. And I was like, how am I going to drink all these bottles of Moet? I just gave them away. But then when we went to the club,
Mhm.
bodyguards walked in front of us and they both pulled out 2 9mm and checked them at the coat check.
I
I
mean,
was like, and then they, they walked around with us the whole time in the club, but I was like, man, they had 2 9s on them each.
with all the stories and stuff that you face, some of the wild stories that you faced, did anything ever surprise you, or it's just like, that I've learned to just see that the unexpected can happen?
What surprised me was that when I look back over the stories that you read, I was only 25. And then, to be faced with some of the things I was faced with, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I handled that. Or I was able to, because you got to realize, especially when I was the tour manager, I'm like responsible for 30 or more people at 25. And a lot of them are older than me, then there are situations where I'm dealing with money all the time. And then, of course, there's drugs from the 80s, there's guns and everything else. So I have to deal with that element as well. And I have to protect my staff, I have to protect the group. At the same time, I got to protect myself. You're reading the book about those situations, the clubs, going to one club and the gun putting that to my head, and another club, the same thing. So there's a lot of drama in those stories, but it's a good read.
It is definitely, even the time, that your DJ equipment was stolen,
Yes.
and that whole thing, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the end of my DJing career and the beginning of my promoting career. Because during that time I had lost all my equipment. I was DJing at 3 clubs during the week. Just about almost dropped out of school because I wasn't making it to class in the mornings. But by the time my equipment got stolen, I couldn't afford all those records that I had. My parents wasn't trying to buy me no more equipment. They were probably happy because it's like, oh, okay, maybe he'll do better in school now. But at the same time, it was just something that just kind of progressed over time, and I was able to get in there and learn how to promote concerts, and that's where I met Melba Moore and Phyllis Hyman. And Melba gave me her phone number and said, "Come on, when you get out of school, call me up. Let's see what we can do for you."
Yes, the lovely Melba Moore, who's also a friend to the show. You can share
Yes.
about that, working with her and her husband at the time
Yep.
as well. You talk about arriving in your book. So when you found yourself in rooms hobnobbing with people known for their fame and fortune, it can feel good and like you arrived, although arriving can be a constant thing. So, Mark, tell us more about that.
Well, shoot, half of the people, well, I won't say half, there were a lot of people. I was just starstruck. When I first worked with Eddie Murphy, starstruck. With Prince, starstruck. There were certain people like with Billy D. Williams. There were people that I grew up with, watching or listening to their music. And here I am, doing something, or I'm somebody important to them. That's a lot, to really just swallow, being able to put the distribution company together for Prince, being on the road with Eddie Murphy, um, you know, having Billy D. Williams do a few shows for me, and all these people, I talk to them. I want to hear their stories, and they tell me the stories. So that's just icing on the cake for me.
Do you see yourself as a legend?
No,
Okay,
but
why
I should.
not?
No, it really didn't hit me until I started listening to the interviews. And I say that is because when I really look back at it, it's like, hey, Mark, you introduced rapping to the guy who made the first rap song. So that's got to mean a lot, because the guy who made the first rap song, Rapper's Delight, that everybody knows, he learned from you. And he talks about it in the book. And the forward, he says, if it wasn't for me, he wouldn't be who he was. And he thanks me, you know, many times for, introducing them to this art form.
Is that significance the reason why he's the one who wrote the foreword?
It was, I was looking for who I was going to ask. And I asked him because not only were we friends in high school, but he didn't have to say, Mark, he could have said, oh, yeah, I learned it in New York. I heard it from Flash. Or But he told the truth. He said, listen, there was a guy with the high school named Mark Green. That was the first person I ever heard rapping. So, you know, I had to go back to him.
And you have talked about, even just recently, you have had a hand, you've worked with Mr. Roy Ayers, Roberta Flack, and you were in talks with Angie Stone for some upcoming events. So what do you have to say about them no longer being here? Any thoughts and thoughts about loss and legacy?
For all of them that you mentioned, I work with all of them, and my condolences to their families and friends. And, it's just recently, Angie and I have been talking because I just booked 5 shows on her. We talked the day before she lost her life at 4 in the morning, but I talked to her early that morning before the show. And I just sent her another offer for another show I had. And I met Angie back in 1979 when they came to Sugar Hill. I was interning there. And when they first got there, me, her, Blondie, and Cheryl, we all became friends. I think on my Facebook post, and even in the book, I show a picture that
Yes.
I took when they first got there. And we had always been friends, and we would talk every now and then. But it wasn't until recently that Angie and I really started collaborating on a bunch of these shows. So it was just very sad the way everything went down with her. I know that she had some physical issues she was dealing with. At the end of the day, I know she's with God because we talked about it, and she was just a God-fearing woman that understood her purpose.
Where were these shows going to take place?
They were in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Norina, North Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, those are some of the communities that she has touched a lot. She's touched so many people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think she never really got her deserving, um, let's say, what she should be. She never really got her call like she should have. But at the end, people came out to see her and people talk about it, and even Tyler Perry mentioned it in the service. And I think that all makes a big difference to let people know that you have people that really know what you were and how you affected their lives.
How do you want to be remembered in terms of your own legacy, Mark?
I want to be remembered as a person with integrity, a person who always tried to influence and inspire others by things that I've done. When you read the book, you're going to read a bunch of stories. There are stories of people I helped get #1 records. There are people who I taught high school for a minute. You're going to read stories about all the artists that I met, that I passed on, that became big time celebrities. Um, so, my legacies, I just want to be, that person who was an influencer in hip hop, and also not only just hip hop, but in the whole music.
In the phase of your career now, what do you like the most about it?
I like the most that I'm still doing. I'm still doing. A lot of my friends that I'm in here 40 years plus, and I still been able to stand tall in the game. And if only because I've constantly reinvented myself. I talk about in my book how, even during the down times, I still studied. I still looked for ways to get back in the game. I took myself back to school. I went to venue management school. I made ways to continue to bring in and come in while I'm still trying to get back in the game. I did things that I had to do that most people wouldn't do, but it was a sacrifice to me. I never thought that would be temporary. That would be a long-term situation. I knew this, putting up posters on the street, I knew that was going to be temporary. Running errands for this person, I knew that's just temporary. I just stayed focused.
You stayed focused, and definitely one of the things that struck me, and I'm sure other readers and future readers, is just your tenacity as well. You just keep going. And I know I even said that earlier, but that's such a powerful way to be in life. You didn't even always have it figured out, but yet you just kept going and you just kept going.
Yes.
And how did you know though to keep going?
Passion. Passion. You gotta have passion. I could do this for free all my life if I could still live and not get paid, and I would definitely do it, because this is what I love to do. I constantly I like to research. I want to know about the artists I'm working with. I want to know their history. I want to know everything about what I'm doing. I talk about in my books, that just don't, be focused on your position. Learn the positions that are around you. Learn what this person did. Because in the book, I did sales, I did marketing, I did promotions, but all of them, each one of those positions influence the next position or has something to do with the next position. So I say to everybody, like if you're doing publicity, just don't stick on publicity, learn other aspects of the game, learn the sales, learn the marketing, learn the promotions, because they all work hand in hand.
Are you getting an opportunity at all to challenge yourself, just, with all the experience that you have?
I think I have challenged myself because, again, everything hasn't been easy. I deal with all kinds of situations. There's always something that makes you like, man, how am I going to fix this? Or how am I going to work this out? So there's always those type of situations. Again, you got to go back to the manual of the book. And at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the show must go on.
Wow. What is your favorite feedback that you've gotten for the show must go on so far?
Oh my goodness, sister, I can't put it down. This book is so great. The stories are so great. I really love your story. I mean, those are the constant, reminders and constant comments that I continue to have. And I'm happy because, again, I'm just telling my story as it is. It wasn't like I'm trying to fabricate something or trying to make something bigger or better than what it was. These are actual stories, everything from the Ku Klux March to having a gun put to my head. So
If you were to start over, Mark, is there anything that you would have done differently, or do you think it was all destined?
I think I would have been more aggressive. I would have been more confident in the things that I knew and did. I was intimidated at times because, especially when I came out of school, I was pretty good playing drums, but when I hit New York and really met some really bad musicians, I was like, man, I ain't as good as I thought I was. But it's the same effect that happens sometimes when you're in this business, because you're constantly in competition, you're constantly competing with everyone that's in the business. And sometimes, that intimidation can overcome your reality.
For those of us on the outside looking in, Mark, it looks like you've done it all, every single thing. But is there anything that you haven't done in music yet that you would like to?
No.
Meaning like you have done it all, right?
I produced songs. I wrote a number one R&B song. I produced the top 10 rap record. I've did a book now. I mean, I did everything I ever wanted. Taught high school. I found a person in my class and got her a deal, and she had a number one record, became number one pop record, and opened for Britney Spears. I think I got a chance to work with my favorite artists, from Prince to Usher to you name it. So I think at the end of the day, I can say I'm at peace. I did everything I wanted to do.
What is your advice to anyone that wants to write a book?
Well, I think, again, for me, I had no idea how to write a book. Even when I published the Grandmaster Flash story, I didn't know anything. I went online, learned how to publish a book, and then I went and hit the streets. For people that's trying to write a book, I think you really need to make sure that your book is something that, your story is something that you want to tell, is something that people want to read. This book was very expensive to do. I did get a co-writer because, again, I didn't know how to format it or how to, get started. Erika helped me a lot by showing me. And I took what she wrote down, and then I turned around and edited and put it more into my words. So it was just something that you just need to read up and read about how and what needs to be done in order to write the book.
And what was the book that you borrowed, which became your Bible of how you were going to make it in entertainment?
I've been trying to find it somewhere in my basement. I think it was Jobs in the Music Industry, something like that. It was just like I called it my Bible because it had all the different careers in the music, from publicity to publisher to A&R to promotions, and it detailed all the jobs.
What is your advice for anyone who wants to get into entertainment these days?
Well, my advice is to really read and study, learn everything you can. I think people don't understand that, there's a lot of information, especially now. When I came up, we didn't have internet. So everything was, you went to the library to learn anything. You can Google anything you want to know about this business. So the information is there. I just say become a master of what you want to do by reading and listening and asking questions. Find somebody to mentor you. It's not like for me, whenever I meet somebody, and I still do this today, even in the business. Like recently, I was the HR guy was retiring from Lehman, and I said to him, I said, "Listen, congratulations on your retirement. Can you give me some words of advice?" Because that's how I am. I want knowledge. I want to know. And he gave me some words that was very strong for me. Although it might have been just some words to him, but I took what he said in reality.
And on that note, Mark Money Green. Mark, thank you so much for talking to So Booking Cool. You're super cool. You're so booking cool. And just let everyone know the best way to keep up with you and to definitely check out The Show Must Go On.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Celebrity Talent Inc. INC, or Facebook Celebrity Talent Agency, or you can go to my website and find the book at markmoneygreen.com or Barnes and Nobles or even Amazon. Is all there. I have an ebook as well.
Make sure you guys check it out. And thank you to all the viewers and listeners. Until next time, So Booking Cool.
Thank you so much.